In the heart of Africa, there exists an empire that has never forgotten its origins. It is said to have been founded by Menelik I, son of King Solomon of Jerusalem and the Queen of Sheba. A sacred lineage, a promise. But at the dawn of the 19th century, this promise is in tatters. The Ethiopian Empire is nothing more than a name on a map. A jigsaw puzzle of kingdoms, principalities and provinces, where every king fancies himself an emperor, and where every warlord pulls the rug out from under him. At that time, the imperial domain is only a fragment of the Ethiopia we know today. The northern highlands are a beating heart whose borders are still far from reaching the vast plains of the south and east. Everything remains to be conquered, unified, and defended. It is in this chaos that a child is born. A child whose destiny is to put the pieces back together. But his entry into this world is anything but a fairy tale. On August 17, 1844, in the town of Angolala, not far from Ankober, a palace servant gives birth to a boy. Her name is Wizero Ejigayehu. The father is Prince Haile Melekot, son of King Sahle Selassie. But the prince has abandoned this woman before even knowing she was pregnant. The child is thus born in secret, out of wedlock, in the servants' quarters. He is named Sahle Maryam. His legitimacy is immediately contested. Some at court whisper that he has no right to the throne. Yet, the elderly king Sahle Selassie, upon seeing the newborn, senses something, a spark. So he breaks with tradition. He orders a civil marriage between his son and the servant, thus legitimizing the child. Then he gives him a prophetic name, taken from the founding legend of the dynasty, Menelik. Like the son of King Solomon, like the founder of the dynasty. The old king burdens this infant with a responsibility he will only understand years later. But from his very first steps, the little prince moves through a brutal feudal court where blood and intrigue are commonplace. Sahle Maryam's idyllic childhood is a parenthesis that comes to a brutal end. In the north, a man is shaking the country. A man not of royal lineage. His name is Kasa Hailu, but he has himself crowned Tewodros II. He seizes power through force, faith, and an iron will. Tewodros has a dream to unify Ethiopia, whatever the cost. For him, Shewa, the southern kingdom ruled by Sahle Maryam's father, is a rebellious province that must be subdued. In 1855, Tewodros marches south with his army, equipped with cannons manufactured with the help of European craftsmen. Sahle Maryam's father, King Haile Melekot, tries to resist. But illness strikes him down in the middle of the campaign. He dies, leaving his kingdom undefended and his son at the mercy of the conqueror. Young Sahle Maryam is not yet 12 years old. He is captured, torn from his mother and his land, and taken north to a stone prison perched atop an impassable mountain. Magdala, now called Amba Mariam. The throne of Shewa is empty. An officer named Bezebe assumes the regency. The loyal supporters of Haile Melekot hope that one day the rightful heir will return. Against all expectations, Tewodros does not treat the child like a common prisoner. He has him raised alongside his own sons, provides him with tutors, and instructs him in sacred texts and the art of war. He sees him not only as a hostage, but also as a surrogate son. The emperor even goes so far as to offer him the hand of his own daughter, Altash Tewodros. Sahle Maryam accepts. This marriage binds him to his jailer through a familial tie. For 10 years, Magdala becomes his world. An impregnable fortress built atop an amba, one of those table mountains that dot the Ethiopian landscape. But it is also a school. Sahle Maryam observes. He sees Tewodros receive ambassadors, raise armies, and manufacture cannons and rifles. He sees modernity knocking at Ethiopia's door, but he also sees the other side of power: paranoia and cruelty. When a nobleman is accused of treason, Tewodros has him executed without trial. At the same time, young Sahle Maryam dreams of elsewhere. Despite everything, he remains the rightful heir to a dynasty and a kingdom. The loyal supporters of his father who remain in the kingdom send him secret messages, begging him to return. As time passes, the authority of Emperor Tewodros II begins to crumble. Incessant revolts and the sovereign's growing paranoia weaken imperial power. At the same time, events unfold rapidly in Shewa. Finally, Bezel, who has assumed the regency, intends to establish himself permanently. He proclaims himself Negusse. Sahle Maryam understands that he must act before the empire and his kingdom descend completely into chaos. On the night of July 1st, 1865, he orchestrates a daring escape with a few loyal supporters who have infiltrated the empire. They cross the vertiginous precipices surrounding the Magdala Table Mountain, descending with the aid of hemp ropes in the moonless night. A messenger is dispatched to Queen Menelik II of Wuchale. She is instructed to send men, as agreed, to meet him at the border. She welcomes him into her kingdom, but not without ulterior motives. When Tewodros learns of the escape, he flies into a rage. He sends men after this ungrateful son-in-law. The queen actively participates in this escape, but it isn't out of pure heroism. The reality is tragic. She wants to use Sahle Maryam as a bargaining chip to free her own son, an imam held captive by the emperor. When this proposal reaches Tewodros, his fury is extreme. He refuses to bargain. He immediately executes 29 Oromo hostages and orders that 12 Amhara notables be beaten to death with bamboo sticks. Finally, he executes the queen's son as a direct political reprisal for the insubordination of the Shewa nobles. This act of cruelty radically transforms the situation. Having no more hostages to exchange, Queen Menelik II chooses to forge a political alliance with the fugitive and has him escorted by her own soldiers to the borders of Shewa. 1866. Sahle Maryam returns to Ankober. He is no longer a child. He is 22 years old. He has learned that force alone is not enough, that paranoia destroys everything, and that patience is a formidable weapon. First, he has to eliminate the usurper installed by Tewodros Bezel. He defeats him at the Battle of Kifu. Then, finally, he is crowned. He is no longer Sahle Maryam. He becomes Menelik II, Negusse of Shewa, king. Tewodros is now but a shadow of his former self. Isolated and betrayed, he controls only the walls of his fortress. The country is slipping from his grasp. He sinks deeper and deeper into paranoia. In 1868, he makes the fatal mistake of imprisoning members of the British diplomatic mission. London sends an expeditionary force. Many local chiefs, including Negusse Negest, facilitate the British advance to get rid of the emperor. They free the prisoners and burn Magdala to the ground, carrying off numerous imperial treasures. They leave behind a vacant throne that is fought over by the great lords of Ethiopia. Negusse Negest eventually gains the upper hand and is crowned Johannes IV. The Tigrayan holds the throne. He is very powerful. He possesses overwhelming military superiority, inherited from the modern weapons provided by the British after their expedition. For Menelik II, it is crucial to avoid a direct confrontation. That would be a suicidal defeat. First, a solid power base must be preserved. So, Menelik II chooses the path of patience and caution. He dreams of a modern kingdom, of a high-performing army. To achieve this, he needs to control the trade routes. He begins his policy of Agar Maqnat, expansion southward. He prioritizes proximity and immediate resources. In this first phase, his armies subjugate the kingdoms of Oromo, Woleta, Kaffa, and Sidama. This is not simply a reunification of kin. It is a true war of expansion, brutal and systematic. The objective is clear: to secure resources, gold, ivory, coffee, to trade for European weapons. But to administer these conquered territories, Menelik II establishes a system of military occupation that rivals European colonial models. The victorious soldiers, mostly from Shewa, become Neftinya, armed settler soldiers. They are given land confiscated from the local population. The indigenous peasants, on the other hand, are transformed into gabar, serfs bound to the land who must work for their new master, delivering grain, honey, and livestock, and providing days of forced labor. The distribution is meticulous. A simple soldier is entitled to 5 to 10 gabar households. A shambal, a junior officer, receives 70 to 90. A fitarari, a general, obtains 300. And a dejazmach, a high-ranking commander, controls up to 1,000 households. This system allows Menelik II to maintain his army without drawing on state funds. But it also creates a deep divide between the conquering north and the subjugated south. Entire populations are dispossessed and reduced to poverty. Some prisoners of war are even sold into slavery in domestic markets, with the tacit approval of the imperial power. Ethiopian unification comes at a price, and the people of the south will never forget that price. In 1878, to appease Johannes IV, Menelik II submits his kingdom to the nominal authority of the emperor through the Treaty of Wuchale. He is not ready. He needs more time. While his armies conquer the south, Menelik II uses gold and ivory to purchase modern weapons. Through foreign traders, adventurers, and advisors, notably the Swiss engineer Alfred Ilg, entire shipments of rifles arrive through the French port of Djibouti. Remingtons, Gras rifles, then repeating rifles, Hotchkiss cannons, tons of ammunition. Menelik II thus establishes the first modern army in Africa. His rivals, mired in their disputes over precedence, suspect nothing. 1883. Menelik II is almost 40 years old. He needs an alliance with the north, a counterweight to the power of Emperor Johannes IV. He is presented with Taytu Betul. Taytu is no ordinary princess. She is 30 years old, from the highest nobility of the north, of Semien and Gondar. Intelligent, cultured, proud to the point of stubbornness. She has already been married 3 times. She knows the intricacies of court intrigue. And she is not impressed by kings. Menelik II, on the other hand, is impressed. Their marriage is not merely a political union. It is a meeting of minds. Taytu becomes his closest and most trusted advisor. She embodies tradition, distrust of foreigners, the red line that must not be crossed. Where Menelik II is diplomatic, patient, sometimes overly conciliatory, Taytu is steel. She is a constant reminder that honor and sovereignty are not negotiable. She helps him forge alliances in the northern provinces. 1884, the Berlin Conference. The major European powers meet under Bismarck's leadership to orchestrate the partitioning of Africa. Italy, a latecomer to the colonial race, is a young, poor, but proud nation. Too proud, it thirsts for recognition. It looks to Europe, already divided among great empires. France has taken Tunisia. England holds Egypt and Sudan. Italy receives the Horn of Africa as a sphere of influence to conquer. It dreams of restoring its imperial grandeur by creating a second Roman Empire. It wastes no time. In 1885, it conquers the port of Massawa with the blessing of the British, happy to block the French. From Massawa, the Italians nibble away at its territory. They ventured into the highlands. They named this colony Eritrea. And beyond Eritrea lay Ethiopia, a vast empire, poorly mapped, little known, a temptation. 1888. As Menelik II consolidates his power, disaster strikes Ethiopia. Kifu Khan, the bad days. But this disaster is not natural. It has a human, even colonial origin. A few years earlier, the Italians establish a port at Massawa on the Red Sea. To supply their troops, they import cattle from India. This cattle carries a deadly virus, rinderpest. The virus spreads like wildfire. In a few months, more than 90% of the empire's draft oxen are decimated. Without oxen to plow the land, the farmers can no longer sow their fields. Then come the locusts in swarms so thick they block out the sun. Then drought finishes off what the epidemics and insects have begun. The granaries empty, the rivers dry up. It is estimated that during these years of famine, a third of the Ethiopian population dies. The Kifu Khan lasts until 1892. The famine strikes the entire empire hard, but it is particularly deadly in the northern provinces, Tigray, Begemder, and Wollo. These are precisely the provinces of Menelik II's rivals. The provinces loyal to Emperor Johannes IV. By a grim coincidence, or perhaps a cruel twist of history, the Kifu Khan considerably weakens the power base of Menelik II's adversaries. Entire regions are emptied of their able-bodied men, their herds, and their wealth. March 9, 1889. Johannes IV, the old Lion of Tigray, confronts the Mahdists of Sudan at Metemma. He is killed in battle. The throne of Ethiopia is vacant. Menelik II, who has waited patiently for over 20 years, does not hesitate this time. Strengthened by his modern army and the alliances Taytu has forged for him in the north, he marches toward power. He avoids civil war by securing the loyalty of the major chieftains, notably Ras Makonnen of Harar and Ras Mikhael of Wollo. While rival provinces are crippled by famine and unable to act or challenge him, Menelik II manages to preserve his lands in Shewa, which are better irrigated and better managed. On November 3, 1889, on the heights overlooking what is to become Addis Ababa, the new flower, Menelik II is crowned Negusse Negest, King of Kings of Ethiopia. He has conquered the throne without bloodshed, through cunning, patience, and hard-earned strength. And, it must be said, through luck, the famine that strikes his adversaries rather than him. He founds a new capital, Addis Ababa, the new flower, on the advice of his Empress, Taytu. He continues his policy of expansion to the south and east. Barely seated on the throne, Menelik II has to contend with Italian ambitions. For several years, Italy, a young nation eager for colonial glory, has established a foothold in Assab and then Massawa on the Red Sea. It dreams of an empire to rival France and England. For Menelik II, these Italians are primarily arms suppliers, merchants like any other. In 1889, to seal a superficial alliance, he signs a treaty with them at Wuchale. On paper, it is a pact of friendship and commerce, nothing more. The Italian diplomats return to Rome, satisfied. But there is an article, Article 17. 1890, a year after his coronation, Menelik II decides to write to the major European powers. A formality. He wants to announce his accession to the throne to Queen Victoria and Kaiser Wilhelm II. It is the usual gesture of a sovereign concerned with international recognition. Queen Victoria writes to him politely, but reminds him that she must now use Italy for all official correspondence. Kaiser Wilhelm II, more blunt, replies that he cannot deal directly with a sovereign under Italian protectorate. Menelik II rereads the letters. He does not understand. Protectorate? What protectorate? Ethiopia is nobody's colony. He summons his advisors, the European missionaries, the merchants who know the intricacies of diplomacy. They explain it to him. There is an article in the Treaty of Wuchale, Article 17, and there are two versions. In the Amharic version that is read to Menelik II before he signs, Article 17 states that Ethiopia can, if it wishes, use Italy's good offices to communicate with other powers. An option, a convenience. Nothing more. In the Italian version kept in Rome, Article 17 doesn't say could, it says consents. Ethiopia consents to go through Italy. A subtle nuance, seemingly, but a chasm in reality. The shock is profound. Menelik II is no fool. He knows that diplomacy is a battlefield, but he hasn't imagined that one could betray like this over a word, a comma. Anger rises, but it doesn't yet take the form of Menelik II. It takes the form of Taytu. Taytu Betul has never liked foreigners. She distrusts their smiles, their promises, their guns. She sees in them what Menelik II sometimes refuses to see, predation. When she learns of the deception, she flies into a cold rage, a queen's rage, a woman's rage, a woman of the North's rage, one who knows that honor is not negotiable. The Italian diplomats are summoned. They try to explain, to downplay, to promise compensation. Taytu receives them, and she speaks to them. According to the chronicles of the time, she reportedly tells them, "I am a woman. I don't like war, but I would rather die than accept your protectorate." The words land like a guillotine. For the first time, Italy understands that Ethiopia will not be swallowed up. That behind the smile of the diplomat Menelik II lies the steely resolve of Empress Taytu. Menelik II is playing for time. He doesn't break with Italy immediately. Not yet. He needs time. Time to buy more weapons, time to unify his leaders, time for Italy to sink deeper into its own contradictions. So he writes, he protests. He sends letters to Rome, London, Paris, and Berlin. He denounces Italian duplicity, but he does so in measured, almost polite terms. He gives the impression that he is still negotiating. Meanwhile, caravans cross the desert. Crates of rifles are unloaded at Djibouti, a French port, and make their way up to the highlands. Hotchkiss cannons, Graz rifles, Remingtons, and tons of ammunition. The money comes from the gold of the south, from ivory, from coffee. Everything Menelik II has amassed during 20 years of conquests. To the north, there is Ras Mengesha, the son of the former emperor Johannes IV, an ousted heir, a bitter prince, who controls Tigray, the province closest to the Italians. Mengesha is an ally weakened by rival wars and famine. One wrong move and he will fall. Menelik II sends emissaries. He makes promises, he flatters, he appeases. He doesn't want a civil war while the Italians are prowling. He needs to unify his empire. But the Italians, for their part, are fanning the flames. In Rome, they dream big. The Prime Minister, Francesco Crispi, is an old patriot who sees the colonial empire as Italy's redemption. He wants the Mediterranean to become an Italian lake again. He wants Europe to tremble. Crispi urges his generals on. He tells them, Ethiopia is ours. Article 17 of the treaty says so. Menelik II is merely a vassal king. The Italian governors of Eritrea treat Ras Mengesha as their subordinate. They occupy territories. They advance, certain of their rights. On February 12, 1893, Menelik II summons the representatives of the European powers to Addis Ababa. Before them, he reads a declaration. He recalls the Treaty of Wuchale, presents both versions and denounces its forgery. And he utters the words that history would remember. Ethiopia needs no one. It reaches out to God. The Treaty of Wuchale is dead. Menelik II immediately repays all his debts to Italy, down to the last cent, so that nothing binds Ethiopia to Rome anymore. The door to diplomacy closes. In Italy, Francesco Crispi is ranting. He demands a punitive expedition. He wants to subdue Menelik II, to teach him who he's dealing with. War is no longer a threat. It has become a certainty. The empire is preparing. At the end of 1894, the weapons speak. An Eritrean leader, Bata Hagos, revolts against the Italian administration. The Italians crush the revolt, but the fire has been lit. Ras Mengesha of Tigray, an ally of Menelik II, attacks the Italian outposts. General Oreste Baratieri retaliates. In January 1895, at the Battle of Kotit, he surprises and defeats Mengesha's troops. Adigrat, Mekele, and Amba Alagi fall to the Italians. The colonial army advances, convinced of its superiority. It has local allies, Ras Sebat Aragawi and the Dejazmach Hagos Tafari. Baratieri also has a secret weapon, a zealous interpreter and servant named Basha Awalom Harigot. He is a calm, intelligent man who speaks perfect Italian. He is one of his key informants and will play a very important role later on. The news reaches Addis Ababa like dagger blows. Menelik II listens, his face grim. Taytu clenches her fists. Italy is no longer content with mere threats. It is invading, it is occupying. It believes Ethiopia will yield. On September 17, 1895, Menelik II looks up at his assembled chiefs. He issues Kitet, the call to general mobilization. It is not an order. It is a cry that crosses mountains, valleys, and rivers, a cry that awakens every warrior, every prince, every peasant capable of carrying a rifle. Menelik II travels throughout the country. He speaks to the high chiefs. He reminds them that the enemy is in the north. If the Italians are not stopped there, they will come here, to every province, to every village. Ras Makonnen of Harar, his cousin, a skilled diplomat and capable warrior, supports him wholeheartedly. Ras Mikael of Wollo, leader of the powerful Oromo cavalry, swears allegiance. Even Ras Mengesha of Tigray, the former rival, the son of Johannes. The common enemy erases old grudges. Ras Alula is there, the wily old fox who, 8 years earlier, crushed the Italians at Dogali. Taytu, for her part, does not merely advise, she organizes. She creates networks of spies in the north, women mostly, who travel, who listen, who report. She knows what is happening in the Italian forts. She knows their weaknesses, their fears, their shortcomings. In 2 months, 100,000 men converge on the north. They come from Shewa, Harar, Wollo, Gojam, even Tigray. They come with their spears, their shields, but also with their modern rifles. They come with their horses, their mules, their women who carry water and ammunition. They come because Ethiopia is untouchable. November 1895. Menelik II leaves Addis Ababa. He takes with him his imperial guard, 25,000 hand-picked men equipped with the best rifles. At his side is Taytu. The Empress is no mere figurehead. She rides a horse like a man, she handles a pistol, and she has her own soldiers. A battalion, at least 3,000 men, who swear only by her. The imperial column wins its way through the mountains. Behind it, an army of women and servants carries food, ammunition, and tents. Thousands of feet pound the earth, thousands of mouths to feed. The great famine, the Kifu Khan, is now behind them. Meanwhile, in the north, General Oreste Baratieri learns the news from Basha Awalam Haragot. He counts his men, 17,000 Italian and Eritrean soldiers. Too few, given what's coming. Baratieri is no fool. He's a veteran of colonial wars, a meticulous, cautious man. He fought in Africa. He knows this terrain is a trap. He knows his troops, too few in number, too dependent on their supply lines, cannot afford a pitched battle against such a massive army. So he waits. He establishes his garrisons on the high ground at Adigrat, Mekelle, and Amba Alagi. He hopes that winter, hunger, and disease will do the work for him. December 1895, the Ethiopian vanguard reaches the foothills of Tigray. They approach Amba Alagi, a flat mountain where the Italians have built a fort. The garrison is commanded by Major Pietro Toselli, a courageous but overconfident young officer. He has 2,000 men, mostly Eritrean askaris. He believes he can hold out. He believes the Ethiopians will break against his walls. He is wrong. At dawn on December 7, 1895, Fitarari Gebiehu, a fiery leader, doesn't wait for orders. He launches the assault without waiting for the main body of the army. His warriors climb the slopes, rifles in hand, defying the Italian bullets. Ras Makonnen and Ras Mengesha Johannes join the battle. Pietro Toselli resists. His cannons spit death. But the Ethiopians are too numerous, too determined. They outflank the positions, chip away at the defenses, and encircle the fort. By noon, Toselli is dead. His askaris flee or surrender. The Italian column is annihilated. The news hits Baratieri like a dagger. Amba Alagi is lost. The road south lies open. January 1896. The Ethiopian army arrives before Mekelle. It is a fortified city. The Italians occupy it, fortify it, and it bristles with cannons. The garrison is commanded by the young, nervous Major Giuseppe Galliano, but it is well supplied. Menelik II could launch an assault. His troops are numerous and motivated. But a frontal assault would cost thousands of lives. He hesitates. That's when Taytu intervenes. She has observed the fortifications. She has spoken to the spies, the peasants, the women who fetch water outside the walls, and she understands something the Italians have overlooked. The fort of Mekelle has no spring inside. All its water comes from a wadi a few hundred meters from the walls. Controlling this wadi means cutting off the fort's water supply. The plan is simple. Don't attack. Besiege, cut off the water. Menelik II listens and approves. Day after day, the Ethiopians block access to the water. Inside the fort, the Italian soldiers watch their supplies dwindle. First, they are rationed. Then they are cut off. Then they begin to suffer. Giuseppe Galliano sends desperate messages to Oreste Baratieri. Baratieri is powerless. He is too far away, too weak. He watches Mekele die of thirst, unable to lift a finger. 2 weeks pass. On January 21, 1896, the Italian garrison raises the white flag. The soldiers emerge from the fort, haggard, thirsty, defeated. They expect the worst. They have heard the stories, the rumors, the fear of the unknown African. But Menelik II surprises them. He orders that the prisoners be given water, that they be fed, that they be cared for. Then he releases them. He lets them return to Eritrea with their weapons, their flags, and what little honor remains. A gesture of clemency? Not quite. A political gesture. He doesn't want a war to the death. He wants a victory that Europe will recognize. He wants Italy to understand that it isn't fighting savages, but a civilized empire. Also, he is preparing for possible future negotiations. But Menelik II's clemency doesn't reach Rome. Crispi is furious. Mekele is a humiliation. Amba Alagi was a disaster. Italy, the great European power, is ridiculed by an African army. The press goes wild. The opposition demands heads. Crispi doubles down. He sends reinforcements. 17,000 more men, cannons, millions of lira. And he sends a clear message to Oreste Baratieri: you must win. I will not tolerate another defeat. Baratieri receives the message, and he feels the weight on his shoulders. He now has nearly 20,000 men under his command. But facing him, 100,000 Ethiopians are converging on Adwa. He withdraws to the high ground near the city. He waits. He hopes that winter, logistics, and fatigue will take their toll. February 1896. Menelik II sets up camp near Adwa. It is a sea of tents, an ocean of warriors, but beneath the appearance of strength lies a weakness. The army is enormous, and it is hungry. Supplies are running out. Supply lines, stretched for hundreds of kilometers, are struggling to keep up. The soldiers begin to murmur. The commanders begin to worry. Menelik II consults his generals. Should he attack? Should he wait? Should he retreat to feed his troops and return later? The debate rages in the imperial tent. Meanwhile, a few kilometers away, Baratieri gathers his officers. They too are debating. Attack or retreat, fight or wait. The two armies look at each other, frozen in uncertainty. It is then, late at night, that a man arrives at the imperial tent, a Walum Heragot. In reality, this man is not an informant for Baratieri. He is a double agent working for Menelik II and Ras Alula, the old fox. He comes with good news. He has managed to convince Baratieri's local allies to flee and join the imperial army. Ras Sebat and Dejazmach Hagos Tafari arrive with their men and considerable quantities of ammunition. He informs Menelik II of the Italian army's indecision. A strategy is being devised. February 28, 1896. A telegram arrives from Rome. Crispi, at his wit's end, writes, "Your inaction is incomprehensible and intolerable. If you do not attack, I will dismiss you." Baratieri gathers his generals one last time. He explains the situation to them. He asks for their opinion. Almost everyone is in favor of the attack. They are tired of waiting, tired of retreating, tired of being the laughingstock of Europe. And it is just as well. Awalam and other agents lead the Italians to believe that the Ethiopian army is weakened and starving, and that a large part of the troops have scattered in search of supplies. They also say that Menelik II is ill. In fact, he is about to raise the imperial tent. Baratieri thinks for a moment. Through his binoculars, he confirms the absence of the imperial tent. He orders a night march. His columns will descend from the heights, cross the ravines, and surprise the Ethiopian camp before dawn. It will be a swift, resounding, and decisive victory. Night of February 29, 1896. 17,000 Italian and Eritrean soldiers set out. At their head is General Oreste Baratieri. He doesn't know that in the darkness eyes are watching him. Awalam and his scouts immediately alert Ras Alula and the Emperor to the enemy's movement. The plan worked. Baratieri divides his forces into 4 brigades. On the left, General Matteo Francesco Albertoni with Eritrean Ascaris. In the center, General Giuseppe Arimondi. On the right, General Vittorio da Bormida. In reserve, General Giuseppe Elena. The plan is simple. The brigades must climb the high ground opposite the Ethiopian camp and take up positions there before dawn. From there, they will dominate the terrain and be able to crush the enemy. The plan is simple on paper, but on the ground, it is a nightmare. The maps are poor, the trails are non-existent. The darkness is total. The columns get lost, cross paths, and break up. 4 a.m., Menelik II calmly dresses. Outside, his generals await him, Ras Makonnen, Ras Mikhail, Ras Mengesha, and Ras Alula. And Taytu, the Empress, has already saddled her horse and assembled her battalion. Meanwhile, the Italians are losing their way. Awalam leads General Albertone's column down false trails, causing him to mistake 2 strategic peaks. Instead of climbing to the intended heights, they descend lower and lower toward the heart of the Ethiopian lines. Da Bormida, on the right, loses his way in a side valley and loses all contact with the rest of the army. Arimondi and Elena try to maintain their course, but without visibility, without landmarks, they advance blindly. Baratieri, in the rear, begins to sense that something is wrong. He sends liaison officers. They never return. He sends orders. They never arrive. He doesn't know that Ras Sebat and Hagos Tafari have cut the telegraph lines, and, drawing on their knowledge of the Italian army, they have also decimated the supply units between Entiko and Adigrat, leaving the general cut off from his rear bases in Eritrea. 5 a.m. Albertone, at the bottom of a ravine, looks up. What he sees freezes his blood. Before him, on the heights, stand thousands of Ethiopian warriors, human waves fluttering banners. He is not on the height he was meant to conquer. He is at the bottom of a basin, exposed, vulnerable, and in the open. He gives the order to turn back, to climb, to find cover, but it is too late. Ras Mengesha and Ras Alula, the old fox, are the first to react. They command the troops of Tigray, those who know this terrain best. They launch the attack. The Nagarit, the great war drums, resonate. Their thunder rolls from hill to hill. The warriors charge down the slopes, screaming. Rifles spit fire, bullets whistle. The first Italians fall. In the center, Baratieri, positioned higher up, hears the din of battle. He understands that Albertone is engaged. He does not know where or how. He orders Arimondi and Elena to descend and support him. But the terrain is a labyrinth. Orders take hours to arrive. The brigades plunge into the chaos without knowing where they are going. Albertone tries to resist. He forms his men into squares. He has the artillery fire. But the Ethiopians are too numerous, too fast. They outflank, encircle and submerge. Meanwhile, Menelik II observes from the top of a hill. He sees the trap closing on the Italians. He sees his generals cutting them to pieces. He still holds back his imperial guard, his 25,000 elite men. In 1 hour, Albertone's brigade is annihilated. Albertone himself is taken prisoner. 9 a.m. Arimondi and Elena have managed to reach the battlefield. They try to form a line to stabilize the front, but Menelik II unleashes his lions. The Imperial Guard sweeps down. The Italian line breaks. Soldiers flee. Officers shout, threaten, beg. Nothing works. The panic is total. Baratieri, seeing the disaster, orders a retreat. But retreat on this terrain, in this chaos, is death. On the right wing, Dabormida has heard nothing. He is isolated in a side valley, several kilometers from the main combat. He waits for orders that do not come. He sends scouts who do not return. Toward noon, he begins to worry. He orders his brigade to turn back and rejoin the main force. But it is too late. Ras Mikhail's Oromo cavalry has spotted him. 10,000 horsemen, mounted on swift horses armed with spears and sabers, fan out. They bypass the Italian brigade, cutting off any retreat, closing them in a net. Dabormida forms his men into a square. The horsemen circle him, strike, retreat, and strike again. Ethiopian bullets crackle. Italian soldiers fall. The Eritrean Ascaris, those fighting for Italy, begin to throw down their weapons, begging for mercy. Dabormida rallies his men, screaming orders that no one can hear anymore. A bullet hits him in the chest. He falls. Around him, his soldiers die or surrender. The Dabormida brigade ceases to exist. On the battlefield, Taytu Betul has not stayed in the rear. She is at the heart of the fight, on horseback, surrounded by her battalion. She fires her pistol at Italian soldiers trying to flee. She encourages her men. She shows them that the Empress is not afraid. Behind her, 10,000 women run across the battlefield. They carry water, ammunition, and bandages. They pick up the wounded, drag them to safety, and give them drink. They are everywhere, tireless, indestructible. The Italian soldiers, thirsty, hungry, exhausted, watch them pass with crazy eyes. They, who have eaten nothing since the day before and have not drunk for hours, see these Ethiopian women bringing life to their enemies. 12 p.m. at noon. The sun is at its zenith. The battle has lasted for more than 6 hours. The Italians have lost everywhere. The toll is terrible. 6,000 dead among the Italians and Eritrean Ascaris. 4,000 prisoners. All the artillery is captured. The Italian flags, those Crispy had promised to plant in Addis Ababa, are now Ethiopian war trophies. Ethiopian losses are heavy too, between 4,000 and 7,000 dead. But the imperial army holds the heights. It has won. Menelik II descends from his hill. He crosses the battlefield on horseback, slowly. He looks at the Italian bodies, mostly young men, come to die so far from home. He looks at the Ethiopian bodies, his children, his soldiers, fallen so that the empire remains free. His face is grave. No triumph, no joy, just an immense fatigue. Taytu joins him, covered in dust, her clothes stained with blood. She tells him, "We have won." Menelik II nods his head. Baratieri, who manages to escape with a few officers, gallops toward Eritrea. Behind him, thousands of his soldiers lie on the slopes. Thousands more march in columns toward prisoner of war camps. News of the defeat reaches Rome on March 3. It is an earthquake. Newspapers speak of national shame and catastrophe. Families of the soldiers, thousands of families, learn that their sons will not return. Protests escalate into riots. Flags are burned, and Crispy's name is shouted like a curse. On March 9, 1896, Francesco Crispi resigns. The man who wanted a colonial empire, who pushed Italy toward war, who demanded this battle, falls under the jeers of his own people. His political career is shattered. The victory is total. The Italian army in Eritrea is reduced to a wreck. Menelik II's generals press him, "Let us march on Massawa. Let us drive the Italians out of the entire Horn." Menelik II refuses. There are several reasons. The first is logistical. His army is exhausted and hungry. Provisions are scarce. Pursuing the enemy over hundreds of kilometers risks the disintegration of his troops. The second is political. If he invades Eritrea, he defies not only Italy but also other European powers. France and England, who have their own colonies in the region, could become alarmed and turn against him. Menelik II chooses wisdom. He wants a diplomatic victory, not an endless war. He negotiates. On October 26, 1896, the Treaty of Addis Ababa is signed. Italy recognizes the absolute and unreserved independence of Ethiopia. The treacherous Treaty of Wuchale is abolished. The borders between Ethiopia and Eritrea are fixed. Italy pays 10 million lira in reparations. Ethiopia is saved, but Eritrea remains Italian. This border, drawn in the blood of Adwa, will later become a source of bloody conflicts between the two countries. Adwa is the greatest defeat of a European power by an African army in the 19th century. The myth of colonial invincibility collapses. In European chancelleries, Ethiopia is suddenly taken seriously. France and England send ambassadors. Ethiopia becomes a diplomatic actor in its own right. But the victory of Adwa has a dark side, long overshadowed by official history. It concerns the Eritrean Ascaris, those African soldiers who fought in Italian uniforms. For the military chiefs of northern Ethiopia, these men are not like other soldiers. They are traitors. Africans who took up arms against their brothers. The anger is immense, especially since some Ascaris committed atrocities during the Italian occupation of Tigray. At first, Menelik II opposes reprisals. He wants a clean victory, a civilized image. But his generals, Empress Taytu, and the high Orthodox clergy demand exemplary punishment. The emperor yields. At the monastery of Abba Gerima, approximately 800 captured Eritrean Ascaris undergo systematic mutilation. Their right hands and left feet are cut off. No cauterization is performed to stop the bleeding. Many die. The survivors owe their lives only to makeshift tourniquets made from their own clothing and to the devotion of their wives, who carry them for kilometers to the Italian outposts. This tragic event, almost never mentioned in the heroic accounts of Adwa, is a key to understanding the complexity of memory. Even today, the victory of Adwa is not a point of consensus between Ethiopia and Eritrea. For some Eritreans, Adwa is not just a liberation, it is also a massacre of their ancestors. In contrast to the fate of the Ascaris, the white Italian prisoners receive lenient treatment. Menelik II insists on this. He orders that they be given water, food, and medical care. He then has them released for ransom or kept in captivity under decent conditions. This is not merely humanity, it is a geopolitical calculation. The emperor knows that Italian public opinion is divided over the colonial war. He knows that Francesco Crispi was trying to weaponize stories of atrocities to justify sending reinforcements. By treating his prisoners well, Menelik II diffuses this propaganda. He presents himself to Europe as the leader of a civilized nation. The Italian prisoners, once repatriated, tell their stories. Some, marked for life, testify to the strange humanity of their captor. Their accounts contribute to forging the legend of Menelik II, but also to accelerating the fall of the crispy government. The news travels across Africa, the Atlantic, and the Caribbean. In the plantations, in the slums, and in the black churches of America, people speak of this small country, there in Africa, which dared to defy the white man. The Haitian intellectual Benito Sylvain, who will become an advisor to Menelik II, carries the flame of Adwa to the first Pan-African conference in London in 1900. The Ethiopian colors green, yellow, and red become the colors of a free Africa. Marcus Garvey, the Pan-African leader, will later display them. Kwame Nkrumah, the father of Ghanaian independence, will adopt them for his country's flag. Many other nations will follow suit. Rastafarianism, born in the Caribbean, will make Ethiopia a promised land. But the relationship between Menelik II and these black emissaries is complex. While Benito Sylvain and Afro-American activists seek to establish Ethiopia as the glorious lighthouse of the oppressed black race, the emperor uses the Pan-African myth to bolster his own prestige. However, he does not spontaneously adhere to Western definitions of the black race. According to some accounts, he reportedly stated abruptly that Abyssinians consider themselves of Semitic descent, linked to Solomon, rather than strictly African or black. This identity pragmatism takes nothing away from his role as an inspiration, but it serves as a reminder that Menelik II was first and foremost an Ethiopian sovereign, concerned with his throne and his empire. Menelik II does not rest on his laurels. He knows that the victory at Adwa is only a milestone. For Ethiopia to never be threatened again, it must become a modern, unified, and powerful state. With the help of the Swiss engineer Alfred Ilg, he launches major projects. The telegraph connects Addis Ababa to the major cities. The telephone follows. Then comes the railway, the Addis Ababa-Djibouti line, which ends the empire's isolation and gives it direct access to the sea. In 1905, the first Ethiopian bank, the Bank of Abyssinia, opens its doors. A national currency is minted, the Menelik II thaler, which replaces bartering and symbolizes economic sovereignty. Schools are founded. Young Ethiopians leave to study in Europe. Menelik II wants to enter the 20th century through the front door. But this modernization has a cost, and that cost is borne by the conquered peoples of the south. To unify the Ethiopia we know today, Menelik II continued his conquests. Toward the south and the east, his armies subdued kingdoms. These peoples did not ask to be integrated into the empire. They were defeated, dispossessed, and dominated. The Neftanya-Gabar system, established during and after the conquests, carries deep consequences. For the peoples of the south, Menelik II is not the liberator, the hero, or the father of the nation. He is the conqueror, the imperialist, the one who subdued their ancestors by fire and sword. 120 years later, this wound still bleeds. The tensions between Ethiopia's different regions, the demands for autonomy, and the ethnic conflicts, all of these find their roots in the conquests of Menelik II. Adwa saved the empire from Europe, but it did not erase the violence of its internal construction. From 1906 onwards, Menelik II's health declines. Repeated strokes strike him. He progressively loses the use of his limbs, then part of his mental faculties. The emperor, who once crushed Italy, becomes a ghost in his own palace. Taytu Betul then takes the reins of power. She governs in his name, receives ambassadors, settles disputes, and sidelines rivals. However, her authoritarian style and her tendency to appoint her own relatives from the north to key positions eventually provoke a revolt among the Shewa elites. In 1910, Taytu is pushed from power. She withdraws to her palace, alone and bitter, yet proud. Menelik II dies on December 12, 1913, at the age of 69. Ethiopia mourns its father, but it also mourns the man who, 40 years earlier, had emerged from the prisons of Magdala to build an empire. His designated successor, his grandson Lige Iyasu, reigns for only 3 years. Accused of moving closer to Islam and the Ottoman Empire during World War I, he is deposed by a coup in 1916. These events lead to the bloody civil war of Sahle and the final ascent of Menelik II's daughter, Empress Zuditu, and her regent, the future Emperor Haile Selassie. March 2nd remains a national holiday in Ethiopia. On that day, people parade, sing, and pray. Children are told the story of these men and women who defeated the invincible. In Addis Ababa, an equestrian statue of Menelik II dominates a central square, his gaze turned toward the north, toward Adwa. Nearby, a statue of Taytu Betul shows her standing tall and proud, a rifle in her hand, the light of Ethiopia. But Adwa is not just a celebration, it is also a painful memory. For Eritreans, the Ethiopian victory is associated with the mutilations of Abba Garima and the failed annexation. For the peoples of southern Ethiopia, Menelik II remains the conqueror who imposed the Neftanya-Gabar system. In the 1930s, Mussolini's fascist Italy attempts to avenge Adwa through invasion and occupation. Ethiopia resists and is liberated in 1941. Later, the war between Ethiopia and Eritrea, 1998 to 2000, revives ancient grievances. The story of Menelik II is a story of greatness and contradictions. He unified an empire, saved its sovereignty, and inspired a continent. But he also conquered, dominated, and left scars. His legacy is a lighthouse for African freedom, but also a reminder that the building of nations is never innocent.
والتضامن